Welcome to Prophetic Perspectives. I'm here with Tim Moore, the director of Lamb Lion Ministries. He's here fresh, not even jet lagged from Israel, but he just got back from leading a tour of Israel. And folks want to know, Tim, what happened between the Israelis and the Gazans? There was almost, 1,500 missiles traded, Iron Dome shot down 500. You were there, you heard the explosions. Fill us in on what happened, please.
Well, to be honest, I heard two explosions in the far, far distance, but in all the territory we traveled throughout Israel, I never saw any rockets. There were never any sirens. So really the threat was localized right in the vicinity of Gaza.
Good.
But obviously there's been a lot of reporting here in the West, especially in the United States, about the battle, if you will. As you said, Shield and Arrow, yet another operation named by Israel to try to encapsulate what it responded to.
Yeah, so how did it start?
How did it start? Well, it started when a Palestinian terrorist that had been imprisoned by the Israelis for committing acts of terror decided to go on a hunger strike. Now, in the past, the Israelis might have at some point force-fed him to keep him alive, but he said, I don't want to be force-fed. I insist that you let me, identify as somebody who is determined to die. And they said, okay, your choice. And so he, in fact, died. Well, that caused the Palestinians, specifically the Islamic Jihad terrorist in Gaza.
Because there's more than one terrorist group right down there.
There's so many different
There's Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and then about 2 or 3 others.
Yes.
So it was only Islamic Jihad that was involved in this?
It really was only Islamic Jihad. As a matter of fact, Hamas, which is a terror group in its own right, has now control over the Gaza Strip area. Of course, the Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas, is in control of what some in the West call the West Bank. We know of it as Judea and Samaria. But in this case, even Hamas didn't want to get involved. It was the more extreme and splinter group known as Islamic Jihad that was launching missiles or rockets. And you would think Hamas surely could control that, but they didn't control it very well. So Islamic Jihad launched over 1,000 missiles. Israel responded, and they took out specifically some of the leaders of Islamic Jihad. And what's tragic is, lives were lost on both sides, but in a great irony, some of the rockets didn't even strike Israelis. They killed Gazans. Most Westerners don't know that to this day, in spite of the terrorism that is rampant throughout the Gaza Strip, 20,000 people come into Israel every day to work from the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip gets its food, its energy, its electricity from Israel. So Israel gives and gives and gives, and these terrorists continue to try to strike.
Yeah, the power plant that gives power to the Gaza Strip is owned by the Israelis, and the Gazans have never paid the electric bill. And I've read that when the Israelis were going to cut the power off and say, you haven't paid a bill in years, then they went bananas, and so Israel's giving them free energy. But do you never hear about that?
No, you never hear about that. All you hear about in our country sometimes is how Israel is the aggressor. You go on a college campus and they'll say, Israel's an apartheid state. Let me tell you something, folks. Israel's got plenty of Palestinians, what they would call Arabs, intermingled throughout their society. They even serve in the Knesset. Right now, Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government even includes one of the Arab parties. So they are intertwined in the daily life of Israel. But you go to a Palestinian Authority area, whether it's the Gaza or the so-called West Bank, except for settlements, Jews are not allowed. It is an apartheid state because in any territory controlled by the Palestinians, Jews' lives would be at risk. They are completely shut out. So if there's an apartheid state, although it's not a nation, it is the Palestinian areas.
Because you hear that a lot. I mean, you've traveled to Israel many times. I've been there a few times.
Yes.
And I don't think I've ever been to a place where the Jews and the Arabs were separated. They didn't have separate water fountains. They didn't have separate bathrooms. They worked together. They're willing to sell tourists because they love tourists equally. They love our pocketbooks. But you're right. When you go into the Palestinian territories, like for instance, Bethlehem, which, a lot of tourists go to Bethlehem, and you go down to Bethlehem, your Israeli guide isn't welcome. You have to get a Palestinian guide. Did you get into Bethlehem on this trip?
No, but it's ironic you ask. Okay. We did have one of our pilgrims who went to Bethlehem on our free day to connect with some friends, hoping that he would get a chance to teach at a Christian school of learning. What's ironic, even at this Christian school that he was planning to teach at, he made the mistake of mentioning Israel. And everybody just stopped and said, no, not Israel, Palestine. Even in this Palestinian Christian enclave in Bethlehem, they refused to acknowledge the existence of Israel, the right of the Jewish people. After this recent conflict kind of died down, finally, Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, we like to joke that he's in the 17th year of his 4-year term. I mean, the man was elected years ago for a 4-year term, but will not step down and will not let another election take place because he knows he'll lose. So he just continues to perpetuate power and to enrich himself to the tune of over $1 billion. You know, it's funny, all these Palestinian leaders who decry the poverty of their people have all gotten rich, even more so than our own politicians. So Yasser Arafat had well over $1 billion squirreled away, Mahmoud Abbas well over $1 billion. But his statement after this recent conflict died down was, there is no evidence that the Jewish people were ever here in Israel or on the Temple Mount prior to 1948. And the sheer
archaeology?
Yeah, well, the Palestinians won't engage in archaeology. If they do a dig, they purposely trash and throw away all of the dirt even that is dug up because they don't want any artifacts found. The sheer ignorance is beyond belief. And yet, from the Israeli side, so I brought back a copy of the Jerusalem Post, and I can assure you there's all points of view expressed, an article about the tale of two worlds, a tale that most Westerners cannot comprehend. We cannot imagine a group of people living just miles away that are so incited toward hatred that they want to destroy a nation and annihilate a people. But one of the writers I thought was very insightful, a young Jewish girl who considers herself a media influencer or social influencer, and her testimony was, we are sick and tired of war. But not war that is instigated by Israel. We're sick and tired of being attacked by other agents, by the terrorists, and then condemned even to respond. And it's very sad that Israel has to treat even these attacks as just routine. They
keep coming back every few years. And how in the world are the Palestinians rearming? I mean, they shot about 1,500 missiles. Where are these missiles coming from?
Oftentimes they're getting arms from Iran and from other actors who are trying to just perpetrate this
like
war.
A proxy war then.
Exactly right. And what's sad, and this young lady identifies the fact that the Palestinian people, the Arab people who identify as Muslim, they could have had a nation in 1948. They didn't want that. They were citizens of Jordan or citizens then of Syria, and they didn't want their own nation. They just wanted to destroy Israel. In more recent history, there have been peace talks when even our own presidents have come to final terms with everything that the Palestinians were demanding, except Jerusalem and the so-called right of return. And whether Yasser Arafat or others have rejected even the opportunity to move toward statehood because that's not really what they want. They just want to annihilate Israel.
Well, Gaza itself, up until 2005, was part of Israel proper, and George W. Bush negotiated a two-state solution, land for peace, and the Gazans were going to be happy and quiet, and instead they plowed down all the industry, all the agriculture, and started immediately lobbing missiles at Israel. Well, from a prophetic perspective, Tim,
yes.
What's the end of this? What is the Palestinians' fate as it relates to the Jewish people in the end times?
Well, we know that God is not going to let the Jewish people be annihilated. He's not going to let them be pushed out of Israel or Jerusalem in particular. We know that we are commanded prophetically to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and by extension, the Jewish people who have been regathered to the nation of Israel. We know in Genesis that there is a blessing for those who bless the descendants of Abraham and a curse for those who curse them. So the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims, whatever you want to call that group that is so antagonistic toward Israel, they will not prevail. I think in due course, as we've recently been talking about with Dr. Reagan's book, 9 Wars of the End Times, there will be yet another attempt to annihilate Israel from some of those immediate surrounding nations. They will be defeated, and then another coalition of nations a little bit further away, led by Gog and Magog from the far north, will come against Israel. Again, prophetically speaking, we know those efforts will not succeed. This is going to continue to be a nuisance for Israel. The world literally perpetuates some of this violence by coddling the attitude of the Palestinians who are so filled with hate and irrationality. I love what one of the Israeli diplomats said one time, and it's been often repeated. The Palestinians have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. They've been offered statehood, they've been offered prosperity. At one point they even had, for example, on prosperity, a casino there in Jericho where they were becoming rich by Jewish people coming to engage in a little gambling at the casino, and they decided to use even that casino as a base of attack and using snipers and rockets, and so it was shut down. They never miss an opportunity to make the wrong choice.
Well, they live by from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So yeah, it wasn't just not so long ago that almost 98% of the land that they asked for was offered to them by one of the former prime ministers of Israel. And Yasser Arafat walked away, he turned it down because he knew that this would call their bluff. They want all Jews out and all Jews dead. But the Bible prophesies in Psalm 83 that Israel will subjugate the Palestinians, whose nation is Jordan. They already have a country. And that's kind of exciting. So, Tim, what do you want to leave our folks with? What kind of hope, what should we be doing in the meantime while we wait for the Prince of Peace to bring peace to Israel?
Well, while we wait for the Prince of Peace, we should pray for the peace of Jerusalem and all of Israel, and we should not be distracted. You know, there's an agenda, I promise you, on the college campuses today. Even in our own United States Congress, you had a very leftist, progressive congresswoman trying to have a day to remember the Nakba, which is the Arab term for the catastrophe of 1948. The catastrophe being the existence of Israel and the failure of all those 5 Arab armies and the intermingled Palestinians to annihilate the Jews. They consider that a catastrophe. We don't want to buy into the satanic, anti-Semitic lie that is being perpetrated even in the West, even sometimes by our own leaders. In the midst of this defensive operation, the current United States administration was calling on Israel to cease and desist its attacks on the terrorists, as if it should just sit idly by and let itself be attacked. Well, we need to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but we need to support the Jewish people in their right to exist, in their right to freedom, in their right to peace. And so, as the Jewish people, as the Israelis would say, we need to pray for shalom.